This is Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in Sacramento today, joined by Ben Allen, member of the California State Senate. And so I want to speak about presidential politics. As you know, 5 times in American history, the winner of the popular vote did not become president. They lost the Electoral College. And we saw that in 1824, we saw it in 1876, 1888, and then recently, 2000 and 2016. Yep. The recent loss by Hillary Clinton was stinging for many because she won the popular vote by 2.8 million. Yep. It's a big number.
Huge.
What do you make of that?
It's just this crazy anachronism that we have from the old days. You know, it was the Electoral College came in a moment when we were trying to strike a compromise between the various states, when half of the states were desperately trying to keep slavery as part of the mix. And so part of actually was what was built into the original 3/5 compromise that's very directly related to the Electoral College was the idea of making sure that Virginia would have so much representation, partly based on their slave population. You know, it is just such an anachronism. It's crazy that we live in a country where where the person who wins less votes
and
wins.
It's the only office in America that I know where the person who takes the less number of votes can be successful.
Right.
You know, one could argue the Senate is anachronistic.
As a block, absolutely.
I mean, you know, Idaho with 1.6 million people has 2 senators.
And I asked those states, why don't they change their state senates to give every county the exact same number of votes? And not a single one of them do, right? They within their state legislatures, they all divvy things up based on population. Why don't we do that at the national level? It's crazy. You're right. The Senate is part of that same anachronism, too.
And I was in Idaho recently, and I heard the governor say, when I saw Idaho's 4 electoral votes go to Donald Trump, I was thrilled because I saw that we are relevant. And the argument is they wouldn't be relevant under a national popular vote system.
Because very few people live there.
But I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, because consider why Donald Trump won. He drove up vote totals in rural areas. Let's take Pennsylvania, for example. Hillary Clinton needed to win Philadelphia by 500,000 votes. She did.
Right.
But her vote totals were much lower in other areas because Donald Trump ran up vote totals.
That's absolutely right.
This argument that the popular vote would kill rural voting is, I don't know.
It's right. It absolutely doesn't get rid of rural voting. They're enormously
or makes it irrelevant.
Look at what happened in the Brexit, right? Rural voters rebelled, and that was a national referendum.
London voted
overwhelmingly against leaving, but the rest of the country voted to get out. And of course, that was driven by rural voters. The rural voters can drive elections regardless, and we see that in states all the time. We see that with Scott Brown when he beat
Elizabeth Warren.
No, Coakley against in 2000 in Massachusetts, even in liberal Massachusetts at the height of the Obamacare debate. So Republicans and rural voters are able to drive through all sorts of different places, Senate races, House races, all over the place. So it's not going to make their votes irrelevant. But what empowering the national vote will do is actually make every vote really equal. Because right now there's not equality. We need the presidential candidates to compete vote for vote, urban, rural, suburban, everywhere. And right now, there's this ridiculous game that is played where only certain votes really count.
I mean, California's votes don't count.
Right.
Because we are seen as a deep blue state. And look, arguably, Hillary Clinton, I believe, did better than Barack Obama.
Even if we weren't a deep blue state, still our votes would be worth about 75% of the regular national vote because of the fact we're such a big state and the Electoral College system is based both on the House and the Senate proportion. Our votes are undervalued. Even if we were always in contention.
The challenge becomes, in order to get a national popular vote passed, we would need bipartisan support. And in the last 2 instances where the loser of the popular vote won the Electoral College, Republicans. And the Republicans now control the House and the Senate. So what's their motivation?
Look, I think a lot of Republicans think that this guy is a joke.
the new president,
and is bad for their party. I think a lot of Republicans here in California are deathly afraid of what this new presidency means for them and their long-term relevance. I think if you look at the long-term trajectory of the country, where it's going demographically, politically,
but that's
ideologically.
why many thought that Hillary Clinton was a lock because of demography.
Yeah.
That she Florida definitely going for Clinton. I mean.
Well,
it didn't happen.
It didn't happen, and ultimately, we're going to have a new candidate next time who's going to have a different. Hillary had her weaknesses. There's no question about it. There's all sorts of things that we could talk about that she probably
James
should have done.
Comey, one could argue.
Comey
with
was in there.
The Russians.
No question about it.
What surprises me about the election as well, and I want to get your take. So California has rural voters, just like Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, states that flipped. Why did our rural voters stay pretty consistent from 2012 and 2008, whereas in Michigan, Ohio, Iowa, their rural voters had gone for Obama and then flipped to Trump?
It's a great question, and I don't represent a rural district.
I understand.
But from my understanding, some of it has to do with the way that the economy has moved.
Right.
And those Rust Belt states have suffered disproportionately more by the growth by all the changes in the global economy, globalization, free trade, everything else that's been happening. And we've had a stronger economy here, even in our rural areas. And so I think that's part of the story.
My question also focuses upon the state of California. Very blue, went big for Hillary Clinton, and for better or for worse, the leadership in the state legislature and arguably the governor are taking a fighting stance against the new administration.
Well, we have no choice.
But is that true? I mean, the new administration is just getting going, and before they even came into power, there were resolutions condemning him. Javier Becerra, corn congressman, he was seen as a foil when he became Attorney General. Eric Holder, it's the former Attorney General.
You think of it from our perspective, right? Our state votes 4 million more votes for Hillary Clinton than Donald Trump. I mean, an enormous margin.
It was a
historic blowout. The Democrats win 2/3 majorities in both houses.
Orange County votes for
Orange
Hillary Clinton,
County goes
first time
for Hillary.
since the Depression.
Progressive measures get passed up and down the state, locally, statewide, et cetera. There was such a repudiation of the Trump agenda in California that as elected representatives who represent California and we're supposed to look out for the interests of California, we really do have no choice but to set up a firm challenge.
But can we wait and see what he does? I mean, look, the one thing he's unpredictable. He's unpredictable.
But we want to make sure he understands that we're deeply concerned about him and what he's up to do, given all the things he said, and that we're ready to fight if he carries out some of his more noxious promises.
So do you feel comfortable with California becoming what Texas was to President Obama?
I think what we ought to do is work with President-elect Trump, President Trump, when appropriate, and that but fight him when appropriate. And so I think the folks in Texas were just fighting him on every single day.
But do you feel as if we are positioned to do that? Because I feel as if arguably we're not. We're positioned to fight.
If you listen to the mayor of Los Angeles, for example, he's talking about a lot of cooperation with
transportation,
on transportation and infrastructure. So there's going to be some areas where we're going to work together, hopefully, with the new administration.
How are folks in your district? A fairly liberal district. I live just outside of it, so I'm familiar with it. I saw a lot of fear after the election.
People are upset. People are fearful. I think people felt really disillusioned and disoriented especially the first couple of days after the election.
Actually, I live in your district. I just realized you are my senator.
Oh, good.
I think so. I'm getting confused. I'm either just in or just out.
Well,
right.
So there's I think partly because a lot of the core values that we really care about, environmental protection, for example. We're worried about what that means. Okay. We're worried about what that means to our budget. We're worried about what it means to health care, to human rights. Civility.
He'll come back.
Yes.
He's Ben Allen, member of the California State Senate. I'm Brad Pomerance in Sacramento. It's Local Edition.